Alrighty, now we're going to get to the spleen.
Yes. Okay. So the spleen is the triangle on the left. Okay. You see in the chart, we got like two triangles. The one on the left is the splenic center. So this is a place of awareness. We have talked about one type of awareness already, which is the ajna, mental awareness. Now we're talking about this splenic awareness. This is the genetic codes for survival, right? It's the lymphatic system. So it is really like, what is our lymphatic system? It's converting all this information to protect us, right? We think that it's just these cells going through our body, but it really is this survival and where we get existential awareness, or like that fight or flight survival awareness. So it is the basis of intuition. So right then and there, we already know that intuition is something that is in the now. Okay, this is information that comes in the now. Some people are splenic authority. So what that means, again, if go back and watch that course, but is that you have to listen to that now information, right? So if it is defined in your chart, you have a consistent way that your fears around survival are operating. You have a certain type of well-being, okay? If it's undefined, you may feel not well when you're by yourself, right? If you were a child and your parents put you in your room, you might have actually thought you were going to die, right? It could be that type of like survival, like, oh, I don't have that information energy coming in. So what can happen if it's undefined is that you may hang on to things that aren't good for you too long. You're seeing the red flags, but you're not really looking at them. You're holding on to something because you believe that it's giving you a sense of well-being and like, okay, I'm comfortable and now I'm safe, right? So really those with an undefined spleen are here to learn about this survival instinct, that intuition. Oh my God, my cat. My cat's like, hey, I hear you, cat. He's probably splenic, but anyway, so this is like a body consciousness that is tapping into you and your survival. So ask yourself, am I hanging on to things that aren't good for me? All right, so I let my cat out, so he's good now. Okay, so yeah, we're talking about like this body consciousness, and if it's undefined, right? Are you operating based on your fear of survival and well-being and holding on to people, hanging on to relationships too long? Hanging on to jobs or situations that don't really serve you based on trying to eliminate this fear. But really what happens is you could be damaging your body and your health, and it's just creating more distortion and resistance and problems. So, and if it is defined, right, you're receiving intuition, you're receiving this as fear, and that's bringing you different type of awareness. But again, you always have to trust your authority. For example, Kim has the spleen and the solar plexus, right? So we know the solar plexus, or the emotional authority, is her authority, but she's still receiving that instinct and information in the now, but she has to resist the urge to go off of that. But just remember what that was, process the wave, and then move on, right? I'm sacral authority, but I also have the spleen defined. My sacral is like that breath, but it's in the now, right? The spleen is faster than the sacral. So the information is coming in quicker. The sacral is kind of processing everything and then going, or right? So what I'm saying is that even if you have it defined, but you have other centers that are your authority, you have to listen to your authority, but you can have this survival awareness, that gut feeling that comes in. And really the gut feeling and the intuition, for example, if you're splenic authority, it's probably going to come in as a fear, right? Like, oh God, I just have this gut feeling and it's like, I don't know, but it doesn't feel right. Something doesn't feel right about this situation. The spleen is unpredictable. So the information that's coming in is like fight or flight. So as an example, let's say that you're a splenic manifester. Somebody comes to you and your body just says no. So maybe you don't even interact with them. And it could actually be your body telling you, well, if you interact with them, you're going to get sick, right? So it goes down to your physiological, your biological workings, right? And how that's going to show up too, even though the mind might interpret it as, well, I don't want to be rude, or I don't know. We have to really start listening to the body consciousness because it's telling us things that we can't really even perceive mentally. So splenic authority, people, your life is going to be totally unpredictable. And the sooner that you can just come to grips with that, be like, okay, I'm going this way now. I know this doesn't make sense, but now I'm going that way. Your life is going to be a lot better. And then for those of you that are undefined, really making decisions off of that, like instinct and intuition is not going to be the best thing for you. It can lead to a lot of problems. So if it's undefined, try not to be like impulsive, right? Or spontaneous. And you're here to work through the fears one by one, because you're becoming a master of fear. You're learning about survival fears, right? So you can educate other people on that, right? Rather than identifying with it, letting it bog you down. And now you're operating out of fear that's not correct for you. Some questions for the undefined and the define. Yeah, making decisions based on fear, holding on to relationships, avoiding confronting your fears. That's another one. With this one, you need to confront them one at a time. What they come in, all those gates in there have different fears, which fear is the basis of awareness and intelligence, right? We need that. Tolerating bad relationships, being spontaneous, being afraid of what might happen if you blank, right? So kind of like not knowing where the future holds. So you're holding on to things that are incorrect. Being afraid that your past will catch up with you, avoiding responsibility that belongs to you, taking on too much responsibility. It's not even yours. Not moving forward because you are afraid of failure, taking unnecessary risks because you are afraid that life has no purpose, judging yourself and others, and avoiding doing something out of the fear of inadequacy, right? So if we have any of those type of feelings, it's just programming and conditioning. So we can convert that into wisdom around those things. And, it's really valuable if you process that and then you can share it.
So I have a question, and it's about intuition. So we're being taught, not we're being taught, but I hear, a lot of come and learn about this inner voice or learn about intuition or, this sort of thing. And I'm curious about that for someone who is like, just maybe hasn't been practicing their design and doesn't really understand that there is conditioning. Like, Are they coming from conditioning or are they coming from intuition? Like, I'm just curious about that.
Well, it is interesting because I've even had a few clients come in recently. They're like, oh, I just joined this program that's all about like helping you develop your intuition and like living your life on that intuition. This is why it's so important to look at these systems, right? These languages, because we're really redefining even what intuition is. Like most people don't even actually know what it is. Well, we're seeing that it's a mechanic, right? That's based on fear, that is about awareness, that is for survival, right? And that not everyone has a consistent information with that, right? Like their body doesn't receive that information consistently if it's open. And with different authorities, right? Like yours, emotional authority, you're not supposed to live your life off your intuition. That's not what it's there for. So if we're training people or teaching people to do something that like for everyone, we're putting a blanket down saying, hey, everyone live your life like this because it worked for me. Like that's not going to help anyone. We're further perpetuating, homogenization and conditioning in the world. If it's undefined, you're learning about intuition and what it means, but it's not for you to make decisions, right? Don't be spontaneous. If it's defined, you have a particular type of intuition that operates pretty consistently. There can be distortions in that. Yeah, I mean, really, not everyone is meant to operate with that.
Yeah, it's so interesting because, it's like I think of a lot of this. It's like, just listen to your gut. And that's not everyone's authority, and so it's like some of these things that we've been saying and putting on other people because it's worked for us or for someone else, we can see why it creates more distortion.
Yeah, exactly. And like half of the world, about 50% is defined and 50% is undefined. So a lot of times what we see in relationships is like one person will have the spleen and the other person has the ego, right? So we're going to be receiving these different ways of making decisions. And so, yeah, it's a pretty interesting process for sure.
So I wanted to kind of add that in there whenever we're talking about, but from what I'm understanding is if they have splenic authority, it's now and gone. It's a moment of knowing.
Yep. If they miss it in that now, it's not gonna come back. Like it's
So
just.
it's a hit and then it's gone if they have splenic
Mhm.
authority. Yeah, I thought so.
Yep. Mhm.
Okay,
Exactly.
that's it for the spleen.